interrupt. If you have issues like questions, or you don't understand what I'm saying, or I'm too enthusiastic and talking too fast, you can also interrupt and somebody will highlight me to the question. Okay, so I can't see you, but I can see if the two nice tech guys are waving at me, so that's fine. Okay, so today's session is a sort of continuation of what we did the first time. The first session we had introduced hymn playing styles, the basic hymn playing. That is, when you open up the traditional hymnal, you see a 4-part harmony. But today we will do the other types of songs and hymns that are not very traditional. So some praise choruses, or some like Getty and that kind of worship songs, you call them. So the object of this webinar is not to tell you, okay, now let's all play this on the organ. That's not the intention. The intention is to help organists adjust what they can so that the congregation will be able to sing along. Because our primary goal as organists is to help the congregation get their pitch, rhythm, notes, and to notice the text, and so we can worship together. Okay, so that's the context of the class today. So we will start from very basic things when we go into the praise chorus segment, so that if it's too simple, it's fine with me, it's fine with you, but if you can use 1 or 2 ideas, I think that will be good enough. And you can work on that for your creativity or variation. Okay, so before we go into that, let us first revise our sense of what worship songs are. Let's go to the next. I pressed this. I pressed, but it didn't work. Okay, I'm trying to turn the page. No, the second page. Oh, okay. The second page. Okay, so we can see 4 types of general categories of worship songs you encounter in your church service in Singapore and Southeast Asia. We are not going into Negro spirituals and things because that's not very common here. The normal style which we encounter for our traditional hymns is the SATB style, which means that it's written like choral music. So there's 4 lines of music going on together. So we will use chorus registration. So later on we will revise what's chorus registration and all these kind of things. But you mainly use principles 8 and 4 for accompanying your congregation on the manuals. Principle 8 sounds like this. Principle 4 will be 1 octave higher. Your pedal will always have principle 8, and you can put some 16-foot on for booming effect. So chorus registration for SATB hymns sounds like this. So both my hands are on the same manual. The upper 3 parts of the lines are being played by my hands, and my feet are playing the bottom lines. So if you are not going to play with your feet, then all the 4 parts will be played in your hands on the same manual. So chorus registration works best when both hands are on the same manual, which is usually the grade. Okay, then song style, which we will soon find out today, is if you have a melody that needs to be prominent, you need to reduce the volume of your left hand. So for example, Thy Word. If I play like this, you can't hear very well. So I have to move my hand to a softer sounding manual so that you can hear. So this texture is called solo and accompaniment, or sometimes referred to as melody and accompaniment, or sometimes they call it right hand solo, that kind of thing. Okay, so these are the two main types you will hear in normal churches. So now let us hear what the chant-based accompaniment would sound like. So nothing will stick out. Everything is in a supportive mode usually, unless you have a really loud chant. But mostly the focus will be on the cantor or the group of singers leading. So let us listen to what this one sounds like. Concordia Laetitia. No, Concordia.
Concordii Laetitia, propulsa mestitia, Mariae preconia, recolat ecclesia, Virgo Maria.
Finish already? Finish? Oh, okay. Okay, that was a short excerpt. So if you notice, am I on?
Yes.
Okay, the organ is in a supporting role. It doesn't always play the melody line. So this is in contrast to the SATB style and definitely contrasting to the solo and accompaniment style. Now let's hear, if you have a strange song like from Japan or China or something you don't know what to do, we call it ethnic songs or miscellaneous. So if you're not using one of these other three textures, then you have to be a bit creative in your registration and what other ways to play to organ. Let's hear how this American church does it. Okay, Najab. Never mind. Am I on now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so anyway, we just heard that excerpt. So you can, if you receive the file after the session, you can click on it to hear how the American congregations handle these ethnic and Asian non-traditional hymns. Is there any issue right now for this topic? If not, we'll do revision. Next slide. I click. It's not working. Okay. Next slide. This colorful slide is a revision for the first session you heard last month. When you're accompanying the congregation or leading it, the first thing you need to do is to use the principal stop, because this is the sound of the organ. Without the principal stop, your registration may sound annoying or too short, too sharp, or too fat, or too bright or something. So the sound of the organ has to be present. So principal 8 foot means when you press middle C, it sounds middle C. If I put principal 4 foot, the middle C sounds an octave up. If I put principal 2 foot, there's 2 octaves up. So this can be indicated by the numbers that you see on the stops. So the smaller the number, the higher the pitch. So of course the organ has pedal 16 foot, which means it's an octave below what you play. So again, the principal stop sounds like this. Next family will be strings. It's the narrower version of the principal. See, it's kind of thin sounding. So gamba, solicional, and viola, those kind of things. Then flutes are fatter. So names of flutes are Bordun, Gedek, or things like that. And stopped diapason is a hybrid kind of stop which you see typically on English influenced organs. So at Orchard Road Presbyterian Church, you have big diapason and the second diapason, which is like a stop diapason. Okay, so these I've colored greenish earth tone brown things because I feel they are the foundation of the organ stops. So you can mix and match these foundational stops to create different sounds. So if your principal chorus is too strong, I can add flute to make it fatter. I don't know if you can hear, but flutes fatten the sound. So don't accompany the congregation with flutes only. So use principals, and if you find it too sharp sounding, you add flutes to temper the sound into rounder tones. The reed I put in red color because be careful, every single reed you pull out can be heard. For example, if I have principal 8 and I add a tiny oboe stop, you can hear it immediately because I've added the reed from the swell. And trumpet, be careful of trumpets. And bassoons, basson. So there's a reed chorus on our typical organs would be trumpet, bassoon, and clarion, 4-foot. So this kind of sound. Be careful of this. When you accompany a congregation, don't give them too much of it because they will stop singing because it's uncomfortable to listen to. Okay, then compound stops are things that when you see on the organ, they have Roman numeral like mixture, for, cymbal, pleasure. So principals make the ensemble bright. So this is principal chorus 842. I'm going to add mixture. So once I add one mixture, the whole ensemble becomes quite bright. So again, these compound stops, be careful of them because you need just only one in your ensemble. Then mutations, the green one, the dark green one at the bottom, whatever note you play is not what you're going to get. So if I play middle C on an 8-foot flute, it sounds like middle C. If I play 4-foot, the middle C sounds an octave up. If I play 2-foot, sounds 2 octave up. If I play Nazat 2 and 2/3, see? So it's a fifth above. If I put tierce, tierce is third. So actually I can play three notes on one chord. So it sounds a bit strange, but it sounds nice if I put another 2 more normal sounding flutes on it. So this is called cornet, C-O-R-N-E-T, cornet registration, mutation combination, good for German music, Baroque period music. Okay, so when you are registering the organ for your worship songs, be mindful of this because if you choose the wrong sound, it kind of like either spoils your line or people can't hear the pitch or something like that. So we'll refer to this family of stops, these families of stops as we go along in today's session. Okay, and any questions yet? Okay, so as we had revised a little bit what chorus registration is, let me show the example again. Chorus registration would be principals and flutes and strings in various combinations stacked up. So if you see your page, the gray rectangle on top, principal or flute 842, and pedal. Oh, okay. Things like this. This will be chorus registration. So solo with accompaniment, you need something of a different color. You need something of a different color in the solo manual so that it can stick out. So for example, oboe, I can put oboe. And the accompaniment can be soft flutes and strings. And your pedal can be soft 16. So you can play this old song. If I were to put mixture on it, guess what it sounds like? Somehow it doesn't fit the sound, okay? If I use a chorus registration on top, it kind of spoils the line also. The line is not so melancholy and sweet like as if I put the oboe. I also can use cornet registration. The flute, 8/4-2, and the two mutations. So this is what I mean by solo and accompaniment registration. One manual will be used for the solo line, the other manual will be used for accompaniment, and it has to be a little bit more subdued. But of course, as the song goes along, you can build it up and proceed to chorus registration or whatever. Okay, so I won't demo the second light brown square, but we can listen to samples of these registration colors from published literature. Okay, so let's see All Things Bright and Beautiful. It asks for swell light reed. So a light reed would mean oboe or hautbois, H-A-U-T-B-O-I-S. It's not hautbois, it's hautbois, H-U-A-T-B-O-I-S. So it sounds like this. On this organ, this is the smallest reed because the next one is trumpet. That's not good. And the next one is bassoon. So the smallest one is oboe. So swell, if you can see the registration on All Things Bright and Beautiful, swell is light reed. Flutes, 8 and 2 in the great. Something like that. Pedal will be flute and Borden 16 and 8. Bordon. This is flute. Okay. So let's listen to this registration on an actual pipe organ played by this guy. Okay. Okay, so you notice that registration really helps in portraying the color of it. Let's go to this famous piece, Prayer of Notre Dame by Bellman. And he uses the soft strings. So Re Si refers to the swell manual. So use gamba and voix celeste. That means on our organ is viola and viola celeste. Grande orgue means the great. It's used flute or Borden 8, which is a flute. Okay, and pedal sweet bass 8 and 16. So sweet means flute or gentle things, which is flute. Definitely not principals and reeds. So I put this. So okay, so let's hear a nice pipe organ doing this. Okay, so that's for the soft registration, which is handy for you to note if you're playing like communion pieces and you just providing background music. So this kind of registration combinations are good for you to know about and to use for your normal service music. Let's go to the next slide, the festival, the trumpet solo. So everyone seems to like this piece. Festive trumpet tune. You need a solo trumpet in the swell, so you put the biggest trumpet. Great full 8/4 with mixtures. That means principal and flute, and if you want strings, principal 8 and 4 with mixture. Also choir full 8 and 4 to balance the solo trumpet. That means if you find what's on your choir is not enough, you just add whatever you need. So our choir is very tiny. I'm going to add 2 because without it, it's too small, so I need that. Then pedals full 16 and 8, which means principals and flutes 16 and 8. Add great to pedal, so I'm going to couple the great sound to the pedal and the choir to pedal. So a bit. Okay, so let's hear this one. Okay, so are there any questions or comments right now before we go to the next section? Is it too fast? Okay, so let's flip to the next page. So now we hear examples of people playing actual non-traditional hymns. Non-traditional would mean either contemporary chorus or those borderline ones like Getty, which sound like a hymn but it's not really. Okay, so everybody knows this song, Here I Am. So let's see the next slide first to see the hymn, and then we'll turn back. Next slide. Okay, see this song. Many of us got this kind of scores and we don't know what to do about it, but later on we'll see how to read the lead sheets. But this is, I was just showing you this to see the song that we're going to view now on the YouTube. So let's listen to the Here I Am, Lord. Next one, before. It's played like a traditional hymn with chorus registration. So the organist can build up the sound and then tone it down again. So you can play this kind of praise chorus using traditional registration methods. Let's listen to this. Okay, so you notice that when the organist plays it like a hymn style, it just sounds like a hymn that's written in a modern age. It's not very much different from a traditional hymn. Now, I found this very interesting recording on a traditional old Dutch organ. So the organist manages to make the old historic Dutch organ with the funny tunings play contemporary music. So I thought you might want to listen to a few minutes of it. Let's hear In Christ Alone, quite a famous tune. So this guy is using different methods to play this piece. It starts with a tremolo or vibrato or celeste or whatever, which makes it soft and romantic sounding, and then he changes style. Let's listen to about 2 minutes.
Currently, I have more than 10 stores running.
Okay, so it changes and becomes quite interesting later on. So later you have time, you can click and listen to all of it. So he uses a lot of mutation stops. The mutation stops which we discussed just now with the Nazar and the tears. So that's the effect you get. Okay, now the final thing from this page is the third one, You Are Mine. The organist just supports the singing. So the organist in the background doesn't play the tune very much. Let's hear that.
I will come to
Okay, so for this nice song, the organist used a solo stop to introduce the song, and then he used mostly strings and flutes to accompany the singing. So, which is almost similar in registration to the Bellman Prayer de Notre Dame registration which we heard earlier on. So the examples I gave you earlier on, you can actually use for these kind of things. You just have to be brave and try a little bit and see how it goes. Okay, so let's revise how to read lead sheets. Next page. Okay, so if you are lucky, you actually get a score which is already written out in keyboard style for you. If you are unlucky, you only get the top line and the text and the G and the C and nothing at the bottom, nothing for you to read. So what to do about that? So the big notes, the big letters G, usually you just put your pedal down, because that usually refers to the chord plus the lowest note at the bottom. So when you hear G, then you see C and G, which means a C chord, G at the bottom, or you can play. Okay, so that's how to read lead sheets. For some people, of course, it's quite obvious, but for those of us who started with a classical piano or something, maybe we don't really know how to read these things. So the chord, character of the chord is always the first of the letters. After the stroke, when you see a second letter, is probably the bass note. Okay, so this kind of piece which we heard just now, you can play with chorus registration. You can also play with solo registration. And when you reach the chorus, you can build up. So you can change texture along the way. So you might want to practice this before you actually accompany the congregation, because you have to know your registration and maybe preset it on the organ first. This is probably the best thing. Okay, so we're assuming that we're okay with reading the lead sheets. Now we go to this more contemporary, which is actually old already, but it's more contemporary. 10,000 Reasons. When we see this, we go, oh no, I have to play this on the organ, and we tell the pastor, I don't want to play, let the pianist play. Then the pastor says, then organists no need to come today. That's bad news. So I think we need to try and make the best of it. Sometimes we get really horrible things which cannot be played on the organ. So then we have to admit defeat and let the pianist or guitarist play. But most of the time we try to adapt to it. So one caution about this is we are not copying the band, neither can we copy the band, because the band cannot copy the organ either, so it works both ways. So we are just trying to adapt what is necessary so that the congregation can sing. So our primary duty is to support the congregation so that they feel secure enough to sing along and sing confidently. So we don't try to copy the recording or copy the band or substitute for missing members of the band or whatever, because we don't need to, and our instrument is actually a whole orchestra by itself, limited by our hands and feet only. We are not supposed to be copying things, but we can adapt them. Okay, so these 10,000 Reasons. So you have this kind of keyboard written for piano or something. What are you going to do about that? So let me play it horribly so you know you mustn't do this. Okay, mustn't do this. That sounds really bad. I would throw myself off the organ bench if I heard myself playing like this. So we don't do this. We have to do something to make the sound better. Maybe you can sustain the first of the left hand notes, this. So at this you don't have, you have. Then you put your right hand on another manual to bring out the melody. Let's see if it sounds better. You can also change the stop to 8 and 2, flute 8 and 2, so it sounds different. You can also use flute 4. So notice different sorts of solo sounds will create a different effect. And of course your bass note is missing. So what you do is put your bass note on the where you see the letters. So C, you put bass flute 16 and 8. So like this. Something like that. So you got different effects of the same on the same piece. Okay, so your left hand, later on, if you have to play this many times, don't play the same thing. You can put some chords. Okay, and you can also build up. Then it becomes hymn-like already. So you can change the character and the color of this piece. Let's hear myself a recorded version trying to play this. Next slide. Okay, so I know that doesn't sound anything like the original song that you hear on the CDs, but at least I think the congregation will be able to follow and they won't be too rattled by it. Any questions on praise choruses? Because we're going to move away from this topic right now. Any question? I'll wait for 5 seconds. Any question on registration or how to put solos?
One question from the.
Oh, there's a question?
What can we do if the chord doesn't change for a while and the pedal and accompaniment get static and heavy or draggy sounding?
Okay, so the question is what to do if the sound, if the chord doesn't change. So for example, we're going to do this. You can change the pattern. Like what was written. It could be. The original score is probably. But what the guy did was to break broken chords. Okay, another way you can change left hand patterns, but don't play like this. It sounds like classical music. Okay, so you can do something like that. This kind of stuff. Your left hand, your pedal can play the kind of bass guitar thing, and then if you have a chord that doesn't change, you can put dominant chord 1 and 4 or so. For example, of course, don't play like this. That sounds bad, and it may not fit your praise chorus because it sounds 30 years dated. So use some kind of sensitivity and taste. You don't have to play. And definitely don't play left hand and pedal together, striking all at the same note like this. It sounds very square and horrible. You can play. Oh. But this will date you. So which generation you come from, this pattern will qualify you that you came from that generation. So you can tell how old I am from how I play this. So I'm not a 20-year-old and can't even do that on the organ. So this is just my way of helping you to adjust to whatever you need. Okay, so however old you are, just play whatever you can, and as long as the congregation can sing, that's okay. Don't care what other people say. If they can do what you did, then they have a right to say. Otherwise, they shouldn't be saying anything. Okay, that's what my thought is. Did that answer your question a little bit? If your chord is static, find the dominant, which is the 5th note, to alternate. So in Yamaha organ style, they call it walking bass, or what you call boom cha cha, whatever. Okay, just go do so or do fa or something. As long as you go back to your original key. Some of our hymns are like this also. Okay, for example, it's actually like this, but guess what the hymn writer does? So many chords changed, but actually he just went. That's the basic chord structure. So if you look at some hymns, you can use it for analysis and see how does the composer get from one point to the other. He normally makes many passing chords and passing notes. So that's called that's a bit of an advanced theory, but it's something for you to think about. Okay, any other question on this topic?
There's one more.
Oh.
Is it recommended to use the pedal to drive the rhythm and tempo, or is it best to hold the pedal?
Yes, that's what we did in our first illustration. So I make it louder, okay? I could play. It has a different effect. So if you want the congregation to sing louder and stop dragging you, you do the. See, if I play this, it has a static effect. So of course, don't do this. Sometimes I hear organists trying to, I won't say impress, but try to make something better. They go like this. Then the attention goes to your pedal, and you've lost the praise chorus effect. It becomes like half a bar scale and stuff like that. It's not very good. So what you're asking is need to be sensitive. What are you doing? Does it help the congregation sing better, keep in time together, or does it change the entire character of the hymn or praise chorus? So we don't want to change it too much. I think that's my response to that. Any other question on praise choruses? Okay, so can I move on to slightly more comfortable topic for me? Back to the hymns. Now we do introductions. Introductions are very important. You can read this text. You can Google the entire article later. Hymn introductions function as musical signals. They tell the congregation, open your book if you still have a book, or look up at the screen. It's time to sing, and the introduction will give you cues about how fast, slow, choppy, sluggish, or energetic the hymn should be, because the text rules the hymn. The hymn is the text set to music. The hymn is not the music. So we must always remember, when people say, I don't like this hymn, why? You don't like the text, is it? You must ask. Usually, no, they don't like the tune. So you say, oh, you don't like the tune. No, I don't like this hymn. Okay, so the hymn is not the tune. The hymn is the text. But you may or may not like the tune. Or maybe we played the tune badly, that's why they didn't like it. So you must ask the congregation or the member, what did you not like? Can I help make it better so that you will enjoy the text or be blessed by it or whatever it is. Okay? What an introduction need not have to do is to play the hymn tune all the way. This is the old way of playing hymns. The introduction is played all the way through, because last time not everyone could read. In the, let's say, Baroque period or even like last century, not everyone could read. So when you play the hymn all the way through, it gives them a better sense of how the hymn is progressing. And they can hum along if they can't read the music or can't read the text. They can hum along, and it gives them a sense of how you want them to feel. At least you are giving them an indication of how you think the hymn should be sung. I think that's our role as organists, as how we lead the worship. Okay, so the third paragraph. In a hymn introduction, the organist can exercise some creativity in crafting a hymn intonation. Intonation means, for those of us who have chant in our church, intonation means what note do I start on? For example, where is the note you start? Is it this? It's this, right? Because I went out here. That's a kind of like intonation. So that's how you start your chant whenever you want it. Okay. So some people like Bach and those special composers write chorale preludes, which tell you the story of how the hymn is progressing. Or sometimes they just do improvisations and toccatas. They end on a scale or a main note that you're going to start on. So those are called intonations. So you can compose one, or just borrow one, or buy a book or something. Those of us who can't do it, we buy books. And then, or you can make one up using the motifs that you see in the hymn. Okay, so now we progress to page 2. Okay, if you're like dummy-proof introduction, you're tired of playing. Do you know what hymn I played? Can't remember, right? Sounds familiar, but you don't know what. It's actually. Okay, so it is not a good idea to say, okay, let us rise to sing Once in Royal David City. What's your first note? Don't know, forgot, because last year Christmas was many months ago. It's this. What are you going to do? So good thing to do is you can play in different styles, introducing the starting phrase. This is not a good place to stop, because they are like, huh, then what? So you must finish it with a cadence, halfway or ending. So some churches do like this. Then you're ready to start. Some churches don't like, they say, I missed the middle part. So okay, then you stop halfway and find a cadence. This is enough to start, right? Okay, so important thing is dummy-proof way of introducing a hymn is give them octave in the starting pictures. Sure, they will remember how to sing. Okay. Another way is, I like to do this often, is to start with one voice and add another as it slowly progresses. And in the end, I have 4-part harmony, and the congregation feels, oh, very familiar, I'm going to start singing. So I'm going to illustrate this. I try registration, solo, alone, and then harmony. So of course people always say King's College, whatever. This is how they do. A solo boy will come out and, not a solo boy, a boy solo voice will sing in the dark once in Royal David City, and then the congregation come. So you can follow this. Now I'll go into 4-part harmony. And you can start. So that's a very, it's a dummy proof, introduction. You don't have to create anything. You just use the organ's colors. You can hop from one menu to another to, have different highlights. As long as I end comfortably something familiar that the congregation can recognize, they can sing together. Okay? So an important note to have a clear signal to the end so that you know when to come in. What if I were to do this? You probably didn't know that I started it because I started my introduction right in the middle of nowhere also. So where you start your introduction and how you lead people is important. So you have to have a rest. Something like that. Okay? Any questions on this page? Okay, great. Let's listen to melodic motif. Motif means very, very tiny. Motif is a tiny motif. Okay, motif, a tiny seed. The famous example everybody knows, especially if you're a classical music person. Guess who wrote the tiniest motif? Any guesses? You know why this is tiny? A C minor chord has only 3 notes. Then C minor chord. That's all you did. Then there's a variation of, so then you transpose it up. See, instead of this becomes. So who composed this? Okay, Beethoven. He was the master of tiny motifs. He learned all this from Bach and people after that. So Bach was very important in creating musical legacies and inspirations for everyone. And Beethoven made the motif so tiny until you couldn't make it anymore. You can't do this. You don't know where it could be. It could be that. But this one must be this. So the motif will give you the seed to generate long melodies and phrases. Okay? So let's hear this very famous melodic motif being used to generate an introduction. This song. Jesus, lover of my soul. So you notice the scale. It's actually minor key. Okay, so let's listen to this nice tune. Okay, so this is not a hymn, but it's a choral, it's a prelude based on this hymn. So the moment the organist played the beginning, you knew, it sounds familiar, and true enough, it is that tune because he used imitation of the motif. Imitation means I echo, 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 echo. Okay, so your left hand start first and then your pedal, and then everybody has this same motif. Okay, so now, of course, we can't do this elaborate stuff. Let's see what we can do. Next one, hymn introductions, imitation with small melodic motifs. So this piece comes from Joyce Jones' book, The King of Instruments. So if you're taking organ lessons, usually you encounter this book, and this is one of those exercises, which I thought is quite interesting to use for the song, This Is My Father's World. I say hymn, This Is My Father's World. So you use the registration, flute 8, I'm going to pull up Bourdon, flute 8, Nazat 2 and 2/3, tierce 1 and 3/5. Left hand is pedal, principal 6, principal 8. Bourdon 16, that means flute 16 and 8. So guess what? This imitation is almost an exact imitation. Okay, it comes from the tune. The second phrase of the tune is in itself a transposed version of the opening. See? I move up. So it's a variation of the same opening phrase, but it just went up and down a little bit. So now this little piece I used to create a little introduction based on imitation for this hymn. So let's hear. Forgot to mention just now, I wrote in blue here diminution of motif. So the original motif is, the left hand went faster, so it can go faster. So you can speed up and slow down your rhythm to match. So this will be called imitation with antiphonal answer, which means that I have a different color of tone answering the original phrase. Okay, any question on this? Okay, so now we go to the next page on the antiphonal. This piece, because it's a happy song, you might want to use some trumpets. You can divide your introduction into various manuals. For example, something like that, or then you play. So you can use, I didn't do very much, I just kind of like hop on and off. Another good way to play use this antiphonal is the Christmas song. You can have a fanfare. Oops, get there. It's quite interesting. So it's like you have a spatial effect. Who created this echoey stuff? The North Germans did in the 17th century. Buxtehude, Tunde, Scheidemann. You can ask Isaac, he's very expert at this. They like to have echoes, for example, like this. I'm just making up, okay? So I can go. Whoops. Like this. So the sound organ seems to have like big space, because in the northern German churches and some Dutch churches, the space was so big that the organ sound could seem to come from different places. So that kind of thing, when the borders open up, go back to Europe and have a look when they have an organ recital going on. So, but here we just kind of like, pretend that we can do it, and maybe it's more interesting for a congregation. So now I recorded myself playing an antiphonal introduction on this Praise to Lord. I can hold a note, use a pedal point. Pedal point means I hold a note. Pedal point means I sustain a note while other chords are moving on top of it. So this is not pedal point. That's not pedal point, that's sustaining the note. Okay, pedal point means chords are changing on top of a sustaining note. That's a pedal point. I could have gone. Then I have changed every chord, which is a bit busy. So organists, when your foot is tired and you don't know what to do, just put a pedal point but change it on time. For example, that's okay, right? So I finish when it's on time. Okay, let's listen to how I tried to record myself doing antiphonal hymn introduction, changing manual as the phrases went. The spots where what I was doing to the hymn, and you can try it yourself too. So almost any hymn can be made more interesting this way by changing the colors of the melody, by changing different stops on the manuals. Okay, any questions on this? I've only got one more thing to tell you, so any other question you can ask during this time. Okay, now everybody's waiting for the fanfare. Everybody likes to make fanfare because they have to do that for big ceremonies and special events. So be careful how you do your fanfare, because if it's very noisy and distracts you from the beginning notes, then it's not going to help the congregation. For example, I heard this kind of things in churches before. I heard this. Does it help you sing? No, right? How about this one? So to me, that fanfare doesn't work because it did not help me know what hymn I was going to sing. It just portrayed the character, but it did not help me get any idea what the hymn was about. So I caution us against creating meaningless fanfares. To me, that's quite meaningless. It may be exciting to some people, but If it doesn't help the congregation to sing, I don't think it's worth doing. Only do it when, let's say your VIP is stuck at the door because something fell down or not ready yet and you don't know what to do. You're trying to buy time, then by all means have any fanfares you like and modulate and change key. But remember to give the congregation the right cues to come back in. So that's our duty. It's not to get carried away by how lovely the organ sounds and then we forgot what we're supposed to do. Okay, so I recommend that we always use what we find in the hymn to be our resource. Use motif, use imitation, and even in our fanfare, we can see what we can use from the hymn. So the famous hymn is actually do, re, mi, fa, sol only, it's nothing. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, that's all this hymns like this. And then it comes down. So if those of you who are vocalists, you can use this for warm-up. It has scales and leaps, so you can exercise your voice. For those of us organ teachers, we can use this for pedal exercise. Playing the hymn itself is a pedal exercise. It normally takes the organ students 4 to 5 weeks to play this one hymn because of the pedal scales. So it's a good etude. Etude is a study piece. So this fanfare written by Joyce Jones uses this. See, she just misses the. She just missed this. She goes. See, even has. See, from the Alleluia part. So she uses the and the this part. Okay, let's hear this the orange version. Was to combine this kind of motif with the Alleluia on a second manual. So you're using antiphonal effect. So using imitation and antiphonal for this fanfare. For this example, I combined the Alleluia together with the All Creatures of Our God and King, and so that was my fanfare. So because I was afraid we're running out of time, that's all I had for you for this webinar. So do you have any questions or comments? We can go for about 5 minutes or so. Any questions?
There was one that was partly answered. There was a question about what is the function of the 3 manuals of an organ. Maybe demonstrating would be easier to explain.
Oh, okay. The question was why does the organ have 3 manuals? And actually, the common question is why the piano has 1 manual, the organ has 3 manuals. On a 3 manual organ, the middle one is called great. On these modern organs, the middle one is called great because it has the greatest, loudest, clearest sound. The one on the choir, this one is called positive, the one on the bottom. Positive or choir manual, depends on what you have. If you have a German organ, it's called Rot positive or something like that. It's just a weaker sound. See, I have. It's just bright but not big enough. Okay, so like this. Can you hear thinner? Swell would be the smallest. So each manual may have the same family of stops, but it's a different kind. So you just get a combine like many variations of flutes and principals and strings and reeds. When you have a 3 manual organ, you have all of those families, but there are different variations of those families on each of the manuals. So for example, on the swell, the flute is raw bourdon. Oh, you have to play this one. whatever, it's Christmas coming, right? But you're not going to do like this. You can't hear, you see, because the grade manual is too loud. So different manuals have different strengths of sound and different types of stops. So the smallest flute on the organ, the smallest sounding flute will be on the swell. The one on the positive sounds like this. It's a bit clearer. The one on the grade, a bit fatter. So they're all just different. So how an organist uses these three manuals is you just if you're playing a hymn, you got to choose the one that has the most clarity for the congregation. So you use usually the grade. You don't like, I know if you're playing pop organ, you got always one hand up and one hand down. But on this kind of organ, don't do that, because you're supposed to accompany your congregation mostly with one manual only, and only when you're soloing out the melody, then you kind of split up like this. And on this kind of organ, you can put your right hand up there if you want your oboe. If you want a crumhorn there, you put your right hand here. So there's no rule as to where you put your hands. It's a kind of mix and match. You got to balance your orchestra, so to speak. Does that answer the question? Any? Okay, other questions? You can ask about this or praise chorus or whatever we covered today. We still got time, so we can carry on a bit if you like. Any question on creating the fanfares? What have you tried and what you think doesn't work, or I haven't covered and you would like to know a little bit?
No text questions, but waiting for people to unmute themselves.
Oh, okay. If you can ask, you can ask now. Otherwise, we will close the session soon. Okay. Meanwhile, let's carry on first. Next page. For those of us who just joined us and we have gotten lost because we didn't know any of the other things, you can catch up a little bit by choosing one of the topics we have already covered. We started this because it was so boring during the Singapore circuit breakers, nothing to do, so we decided to do something productive with our time. So we started all these things in March, April. In this particular hymn playing series, we started with Angela Lim. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. Introduction to Organ Playing Part 1, Angela Lim. So if you look for her recording and PowerPoint, you can revise where the stops of the organ, because her video has very clear sound and video. You can see how the organ stops sound and look and all that. And then last session, I did this introduction to hymn playing, so you can read about that. Then the next one will be Angela's next one coming would be Angela's chant-based accompaniment. So for those who are in churches that sing a lot of chant, let's say not Gregorian only, but the Taizé or some other kind of like psalm singing maybe, you can have some interest about this, because the organ will take a back role, not so prominent like this, because it's more of a supportive role. But we'll leave her to discuss this. Okay. Then after all this, the last one will be by Isaac Lee, who will continue the improvisation thing, because flip the page before. Yeah, you see the first, the last one, how to do improvisation. He started this video. It's on the MSM webpage. You can look at it. Very straightforward way of how to do improvisation, and he will continue how we left off, where we left off this session today. He'll take it up from here and focus on a bit of improvisation with some hymns. Any questions yet?
There was a question about where to find music sources. We have answered that already.
Oh, okay. So this last page, where's the sources? Yeah, this one. Where's the sources page? Yeah, self-help. Yeah, the self-help page. Look at the Joyce Jones King of Instruments. That's the one where we took those tiny snippets of examples from. It's very good for adult organ students because it goes in like topics, rather than if you are very young you have to do a lot of exercises, but the adult students, they need to understand the topic. So this is a very good book. You can order it yourself on the Sheet Music Plus or Amazon. If you need to know how to start playing the organ, look at the lessons for the new organist. That gives you kind of like crash course, but it's by the AGO, so an American-based style. If you want to know about organ registration, then you look at the second one, basic organ registration and hymn playing. So if you can also download the free IMSLP old-fashioned methods. I find them old-fashioned because some of the techniques they discuss are no longer used in our modern churches, but it's good to see how they start anyway. And if you are classical based and don't know how to read lead sheets and stuff, then you look at the last one, how to read lead sheets and chord charts. So this gives you like step by step, like very like how to exercise reading it. So for guitarists and people, keyboardists, they have no problem reading, but sometimes pianists don't know how to read this because we're not trained in our ABRSM things. Okay, so if you feel inclined and like to support our series, you can zap this thing here. And I'd like to thank Eugene and Timing for their help today. If not, we will have silence and empty pictures to look at. So we thank them and thank the AGO for their support also. So if you are lonely organist, don't know where to go, join us, the AGO, because we are a bunch of organists who are no longer lonely because we understand each other perfectly in all our struggles. Okay, so I'll stay around for any questions, but if not, I thank you for coming and attending, and I hope that you got something interesting out of this series. And if you have any more other topics you want us to present, you can let us know. If not, you just keep on tuning in. There are 2 more in our series this year. We may not have another bunch next year, but we'll see how it goes. We have 2 more. So Angela and then Isaac next. So thank you very much and have a good weekend. So I'll stay here for a while in case anyone needs any questions answered. Oh, so are we still on?
Yes.
Okay, just to plug, we are in Methodist School of Music, so I need to plug the courses, okay? So December first or second week or both, we are going to announce that we'll have some short trial lessons for those of us who have always wanted to take organ or church music or piano or something, but you don't want to commit or frighten or something. We have 30-minute trial lessons with for a nominal fee like $10 or something. You can just call us up and sign up. So if you want to be on this list and you're in Singapore, obviously, you can email us here, or you just wait for the announcement. We'll blast it out when we have time. So we have 5 organ teachers in Methodist School of Music, so one of us will be free to help you if you have organ related things. If you've always wanted to play the piano but never had the guts or don't know how or forgotten, you can refresh yourself because we have lots of piano teachers here. If you want to play violin but never knew how to play, you can also try that. And we also have special kids piano class, so if you have like 5 to 6 year old, you can sign them up also. We have special classes for that. Singing, I think we have, but we have to clarify that because of government regulations. So we'll try to have singing also, and probably some guitar as well. So we'll announce that when it's time in a couple of days. So end of plugging for MSM here. Any questions back on the session that we had?
Looks like no questions.
Okay. So thanks everyone, and see you sometime soon again.